Okay, and we are live. Welcome to a new episode of All Things Xbox Podcast. Now, Logan will be joining in a minute. He's just having to sort out some technical stuff, but until then, everything's moving forward. You know, this week's been actually interesting when it comes to the gaming space because all sorts has happened. Rumours about all platforms. You have Sony coming out with their PlayStation 4 Pro, or should I say 5 Pro, and the reaction online since then has been volatile at best. um, but it's been an interesting week. The Switch 2 is apparently going to be announced in the next few weeks. Xbox, they have TGS coming up. They have a booth there. It looks like they're going to have some interesting announcements. There's some other stuff that's leaked, which we'll be talking about later in the show, but there's some good stuff coming. I will say this, though. In general, it's been a weird week. I won't go into detail, but, just things on the news, in entertainment, wild. But again, this is a gaming podcast. We aren't going to talk about any of that stuff. Now, while we wait for Logan to join because of, again, technical issues, I'll talk about what I've been playing. And I've actually been playing a bunch of different games because it's a good time to be a gamer. There's so many different games releasing that it's actually hard to kind of keep up with everything. So I've been playing Fallout 4 as per usual. That game, I can't praise that game enough. You know, it came out in 2015, and I put it off for 9 years despite the fact I bought the collector's edition day one. And I'm having more fun with that game than I have with a lot of other games. I'll just put it that way. Such a fun game, great combat, great world building, and Fallout 3 is one of my favorite games of all time. So Fallout 4 for me, right now, it's a new Fallout experience. I'm loving it. It's just so good. Another game I've been playing is Age of Empires. Sorry, not Age of Empires. I do this every single time I talk about this game. Age of Mythology Retold. Now, I did get a review copy provided to me by Keymailer, and unfortunately, I got the review code 8 hours before the game released. So I'm doing a split review where intro of the review now, talk about my brief experience with the game, and then next week, during the next week's show, we'll be having a full-on review, big discussion about the game. But I will say this, RTS games on consoles aren't common. And when they do come over, sometimes the developers do a great job porting them over with good controls, explaining to the player how you play an RTS on a controller, because sometimes they just don't play that good. I'm happy to say Age of Mythology Retold plays amazing on a controller. It kind of reminds me of Halo Wars. The way that you would click down with the right trigger and you'd have the radial rail pop up and you'd pick which units you want to create at what base. Very similar controls. Also a lot like Age of Empires Definitive Edition and Age of Empires 4 on Xbox. The team have done a fantastic job. The gameplay is super smooth. The performance is great. I've been playing it at 60 frames per second. No problems whatsoever. You can have a lot of units on screen. I believe it's 130 or 140 units. I'll have to double check. But you can have a lot of units on screen. And as someone that used to play RTS games back in the day, a lot, I'm happy to say that this plays really well. I couldn't be happier with it. The story is actually really in-depth. There's voiced dialogue by the characters. So if you like Greek mythology, this is going to be a game that will hold your attention for a while. It has 3 different campaigns set over different regions. It's big. It's a big game. It also explains to the player how to play an RTS like this on controller really well. It's got a great tutorial, easily explained. But we'll do the major in-depth review next week because, again, I didn't get enough time to review it. Now, I see Logan's joined. Logan, how you doing?
I'm doing good, man. Sorry about that. Windows decided I had to have an update right this minute, and it just couldn't wait. But that's dealt with, and I'm here now. Doing good, man. Talking Age of Mythology.
Yeah, did you get to play it at all?
I played the original one and the original expansion, but I haven't played the new one yet. But from everything I've seen and heard, it looks and sounds fantastic, and I'm excited to dive back in.
Yeah, they've done a good job with this. And what can I say? as someone that didn't get to play the original back in the day on PC, uh, I've always loved RTS games. You know, back in the early 2000s, I used to play RTS games on PC, mainly sci-fi RTS games such as Star Trek Armada 1 and 2, Homeworld 1 and 2, Star Wars Empire at War. I'm a big old nerd. But I'm enjoying this game. I want more RTS games to come to console, and they've done a really good job with it. What can I say? And the other game I've been playing is Warhammer 40k Space Marine 2. Now, I haven't been able to play a lot of it just because I've been doing other things, but we will be talking about what the developers said later on in the show. But I will say I'm extremely happy with the game. I have that 7th gen nostalgia with it because I feel like I'm playing a 7th gen game. And I mean that in the best way possible because it's a somewhat linear experience. There's no forced grind. There's no quote unquote end game content. It's just you go from point A to point B, do the objective, defeat the enemy. There's no BS. There's no bloat. There's no loot. There's no damage numbers popping up on screen. It's like a pure video game. And outside of that, I've been playing a bunch of 360 games. I've actually been playing Rise of the Tomb Raider on Xbox 360 because I bought a bunch of games when the sales were going on before the store shut down. And that game is a technical marvel. I don't know what wizardry they were doing with it, how they got that game to run on a 360. And it was probably like the last game on 360 that really pushed that hardware. It's actually really impressive what they were able to do because I've played a lot of 360 games that were quote unquote graphically intensive, and this is probably the best looking 360 game of all time. I've never seen a game like this back then. You have Halo 4, Grand Theft Auto 5, Max Payne 3, Mass Effect 3. Like, these games are like top tier. Final Fantasy 13, but Rise of the Tomb Raider was just incredible. I don't know how they did it. And, I loved Rise of the Tomb Raider on Xbox One. That was ahead of its time, but wow. I will be getting a capture card relatively soon, and I'll post gameplay of it because it's just impressive. I'm playing 360 games at the minute, and like, obviously we talk about 360 all the time, and I have this nostalgia for it because I love that machine. But the games were so good, and I feel like it's a generation we kind of need to get back to that. Again, we'll be talking about some of that stuff later in the show. Before we get to what Logan's been playing, YouTube is not exactly the best at letting people know that things have gone live. So if you enjoy the show, please share it out. It's greatly appreciated, and likes really do help with the algorithm. I don't like doing this whole like advertising thing, but it works. Anyway, Logan, what have you been playing this week?
Well, I finished Diablo 2 Resurrected. Took a while, but I finally finished that. See why it was such a beloved series now, and why it really stood the test of time. Vicarious Visions did a fantastic job with the remaster remake of it. And speaking of which, it's a real bummer that they got folded into Blizzard. Hopefully that they can go back to doing remakes and remasters again. Maybe StarCraft or something. Fingers crossed. But really talented studio. This was really well done. I'm starting Diablo 3, the Eternal Collection. And I've been playing, of course, Power Wash Sim as, the just chill game that I unwind with and podcast with. And also playing Space Marine 2 like everybody else. And it is, fantastic. Like, I talked about how much I loved it last week with you. And it truly is just wonderful. Like, I had, not to get too spoilery, but
Yeah, Logan, you just cut out there when you're about to talk about the game. um, See if you can jump out and jump back
actually,
in.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, you were literally about to say what you've been playing when it comes to Space Marine, and then it just cut off.
Okay, sorry. Been loving Space Marine 2. It's been awesome. Can't recommend it enough. It's my current game of the year right now. It is just brilliant.
Wow.
Love it. Just pure game. Like as sad as it is, it feels like so many games now have been trying to push something or detract from stuff or just are not listening to what the fan base wants. Like this is a pure like me and my friends or me solo are a giant 7-8 foot tall superhuman with a chain sword and big old guns, and I'm going in and I'm murking all these aliens, and I'm up to my neck in guts, and there's all these crazy battles in the background. I see the World War Z tech at use with the hordes and everything. With this encounter, I won't get too spoilery, and, and where it's basically like a scene from the original Predator, where you're in the jungle, you're being hunted by something, it's invisible, and then eventually, and man, that fight was sweating like tough, and I'm not even that far in the game, and I'm blown away.
Yeah, the game's impressive. You know what? Before we get into the rest of the topics, which we have a lot of, I'll quickly I want to talk about that game even more because you said like the game's like back to basics. It isn't pushing anything, and I want to use Twisters, the movie, as an example. So when Twisters came out, and if people don't know, it's a movie about tornadoes destroying these towns in the US, and the basic plot of the film is that they want to destroy tornadoes. And it's a fun film. And the director was asked while the film was coming out, why didn't he use the time in the film to push the whole environmental thing? And his reaction was like, well, it's meant to be entertainment. And that was perfectly like worded because like this like when it comes to something like Twisters, I was expecting them to talk about the environment. Like I'm all for like saving the environment and all that stuff. I recycle as much as I can, you know. Uh, but I was expecting that, and they didn't do that with this film, and I really liked it. So when it comes to this game, it's the same thing. The game is the game. Its story is very much contained. You can play it if you played the first one. There's things there that kind of allude to certain stuff. But like the game's the game. There's no external stuff. There's no messaging. And I want to talk about what one of the developers said because it perfectly nailed it. So now this is by the CEO of Saber Interactive. And he wrote this to Asmongold, who's a Twitch streamer and a YouTube content creator, one of the biggest on the platform. But anyway, this is what he wrote. Hey man, CEO of Saber Interactive here. I love your videos. When we signed a deal to make Space Marine 2, all I wanted was a throwback game. We had the chance to work on something which by its nature was quote unquote old school. I can't comprehend how many current games that we play these days. They are way too complex and way too much of an investment. We worked on Halo back in the day, and that game could be distilled down to the simplest of shooting loops, but it was entirely addicting, which is true. Halo is very simple. You just go to point A to point B, shoot stuff. Anyway, I'll continue. That is what we wanted to recapture with this. I hope that games like Space Marine 2 and Wukong are the start of a reversion to a time when games were simply about fun and immersion. I spent some time as Chief Operating Officer at Embracer, and I saw games there that made me want to cry, with their overblown attempts at messaging or imposing morals on gamers. We just want to do glory kills and get the heart rate up a little. For me, that's what games should be about. Now, when it comes to all the external stuff aside, which I don't really get into on the channel, games should just be simple. They don't need to be overly, in depth. They don't need to quote unquote push something. But like, and I've talked about this on Twitter before. I feel like too many games want your attention constantly. It's one of the reasons why I don't play Destiny. Like, I think Destiny has amazing gunplay mechanics, some absolute crisp shooting. I think the sci-fi universe they have is really cool. I love the aesthetic of everything. But as soon as I see a game with damage numbers, as soon as I see a game with quote unquote end game content that requires me to go and play this game daily or weekly and do these events, and it's like it's a chore for me, and I don't like it. I just want to play games at my own pace whenever I want, which is why I hop from game to game a lot. And with this game, there's no end game content. As soon as you finish the campaign, which I haven't yet, but when you finish the campaign, you can either play the PvP, you can play the PvE experience, or you can do this, you can step away and play something else. Because for me, that's what gaming is. I don't need all these different events to do. I don't need a recurrent experience to have me involved with the game because I've already bought it. They've already got my money. It's not a live service, so they aren't going to get any more money from me. And if they come out with single player expansions in the future, they will get that money. And I feel like too many games right now and too many developers, they want to make these overbloated open world games with damage numbers and loot, and they just want to retain your attention for hundreds of hours. And that doesn't work for me. That doesn't work for me at all, and I'm kind of sick and tired of it. So when I see a game being a throwback to the 7th generation, it gets my attention. The gameplay in this is crisp, it's good, there's no micromanagement of any kind, there's no loot, there's no damage numbers, and the game world, I love the fact that it's actually linear. Do you know how many linear games we get? Actually, I'll put it like this. When I've posted clips of this game on Twitter, I get basically two things. People saying, wow, this looks amazing, and some people saying this, I wish it was open world. Why? Why does everyone want every game to be open world? I love the fact that some games are 100 hours long and have a big, massive open world that's immersive, like Avatar, Frontiers of Pandora, or Fallout 4. I love the fact that I can get lost in these games for tens, possibly hundreds of hours. But at the same time, I want different experiences. I love the fact that this is a linear third-person shooter in an age where we do not get linear third-person shooters anymore. If Microsoft or Sony doesn't publish it, we don't get them. And I hate that. I hate that we don't get these experiences anymore. So, like Logan, I've asked you this before, and ask you again for people listening. Like, in the past 9 years, let's say the Xbox One generation and now, before Space Marine 2, how many linear third-person shooters came out that weren't published by Sony or Microsoft? Now, Logan can either not think of something or the audios went silent and his internet's gone again. Until he can speak, look, I love open world games. In fact, most of the games I do play are open world. You know, again, I babble on about Fallout every single week because I think Fallout 4 is amazing, but I don't want every game to be open world. Yeah, Outriders. Outriders was one game, but it was bloated with content, and the way that whole game worked with its loot and stuff, like, the retention for me was just non-existent. And before Logan jumps back in, like, we had one game, one third-person shooter last generation that wasn't open world and that wasn't published by Microsoft or Sony. For me, that is terribly disappointing. Terribly disappointing. And, like, we're meant to have variety in the gaming space. We just don't have that anymore. And that's so sad. I could cry. You know, I think that, like, Space Marine 2 being a very focused experience works in its favor. You have these massive backgrounds with, like, these giant cannons, which I don't think you could build them in real life. They'd probably just fall apart due to its own weight. They're cool, though. But, like, people talk about, like, resolution, frame rate, FSR, VRR, what all this stuff. And like this game uses the technology we have to have hundreds, if not thousands of enemies on screen. Thousands. And like that's what I want more of. Like use the tech we have to do something different. Maybe I want buildings in the future in open world games where, hey, I can enter more buildings without loading screens. And this is fresh. It's a Gears-like experience, but like you have thousands of aliens on screen, which you can even interact with. Because in World War Z, which did use the same tech, and I actually really liked World War Z. The problem with World War Z is that sometimes the massive amount of zombies felt like a backdrop where you could only interact with maybe a couple of dozen, and like some of them would be like behind a fence which you could fire at. But in this game, like you can interact with a lot of enemies, and this game has a mechanic that I hate in most games, but in this game it works in its favor, and that's parrying. I cannot stand games where I have to parry because I'm bad. I'm terrible at parrying in video games. But in this, you get a big bright blue circle to parry. You press that button, and when one of these tyranids jump towards you, you'll grab its throat or its tail and just end it. And it's glorious. It's absolutely glorious. I could talk about this game all day, but I haven't even touched the PvE or PvP yet. And I just think it's probably going to be one of my favourite games of the year. It might end up being my game of the year. I don't know yet. At the minute, it's Dragon's Dogma 2. It's subject to change. But what a game. And if people are looking for a different experience, that's something we just don't have much these days. And if you like Gears games especially, try this. Get it. I don't know its US price, but I know in the UK it's $59.99. I think that's a very fair price for the content you get. And this game has actually made Warhammer games available to the masses in a way I haven't seen before. It had over 200,000 concurrent players on Steam. Now, Warhammer is a massive franchise. It's been around for a very long time. In fact, during the pandemic, when nearly every single store in my local city just shut down for good, one store survived, and that was a Games Workshop. People buy Warhammer stuff. And I think this is going to be the gateway into people buying, Warhammer figurines, statues, or whatever. And like hell, since I live near a Games Workshop, I'm even looking at figurines because I'm now really interested in the IP. And I've been playing Warhammer games for years, but I've never really paid attention to the universe. But this game is just so good, and it just gets your attention instantly. That I think a lot of people are going to be in my shoes. Like I'm worried that I might spend a lot of money on Warhammer figurines. But yeah, Warhammer 40k Space Marine 2. If people haven't played it yet, I highly recommend it. And again, I'm still early on. I think the game's phenomenal. Logan still hasn't jumped back in yet. Oh, he's resetting his computer, I think. But anyway, great game. What can I say? I think that if you want a third-person shooter, if you love Gears especially, this is definitely a game to get because, again, we don't get them that often. Anyway, we'll move on. Now we'll get into all the smaller topics quick because we've got some big topics to talk about later on. Now, this made me happy today. It made me a little bit sad at the same time. It's that Battlefield is going back to its roots. Now, I loved Battlefield 3. I no-lifed Battlefield 3. I think it's one of the best multiplayer experiences of all time. I put it up there with Modern Warfare 2 and, Halo 3, all that stuff. And one of my favorite maps of all time is actually in that game. It's called Karg Island. And it was perfect for snipers. It was perfect for people using ARs. It was perfect for people flying fighter jets, wanting to drive tanks. It was literally the perfect multiplayer map for a Battlefield experience. Well, fast forward to many years later, makes me feel sad. Excuse me. Okay, here we go. Uh, Battlefield hasn't had the best time. It has been a franchise that's been kind of failing for a long time. Battlefield 4 came out in 2013 with the Xbox One and PlayStation 4, and that game was absolutely broken beyond belief. Hell, if you love the campaigns like me, and I love Battlefield campaigns, I love first-person shooter campaigns, that wouldn't save, meaning that you had to play it in one sitting if you just wanted to finish it. The multiplayer was broken. It had bad netcode. I could talk all day. Battlefield 4 was a good game covered in feces. It was just a mess of a game. People talk about Cyberpunk at launch and all this stuff. Battlefield 4 was at worse. Like, again, I love first-person shooter campaigns, and the campaign would not save. And considering I game hop a lot, do you know how many times I played that first level of Battlefield 4? Maybe like 40 times. I could cry. So, like, for me, Battlefield 4, it was a bad experience. And then you fast forward 2 years, then we get Battlefield Hardline, which was more of a police and SWAT game. Like, it was a cops and robbers type game. And it didn't really get my attention. I didn't like the gunplay. It was a step back for me. And then they came out with Battlefield 1, where for me, I thought it was gorgeous. Stunning game. I thought the gameplay was good. But unfortunately, maybe a month or two after launch, the same thing happened with other Battlefield games. Sniper Alley. Everyone in that game started using sniper rifles. But do you know what else they did with Battlefield 1? They stopped doing proper campaigns. They start doing war stories. They were basically reusing multiplayer map assets and repurpose them as stories, and I hated that. I like linear first-person shooter campaigns, and this didn't have one. It had a lazy war story campaign. Terrible.
Hey, I'm back, man. Sorry about that.
Oh, it's fine. It's fine. Tech issues, we all have them. Just talking about Battlefield at the minute, because Battlefield's it's been through the ringer as a franchise. People online, you'll see, they'll complain about Halo all day, Call of Duty all day. Battlefield has had an awful time. An absolute awful time. Then we got Battlefield 5, where, again, no campaign, and I think we had some war stories, and the multiplayer experience was terrible. Graphically, it looked good. And then we got a Battle Royale. I think it was called Firestorm. It was terrible. It got next to no support when it comes to multiplayer. It was bad. And then we get Battlefield 2042. The franchise, the fans, everyone was hyped. I was hyped. The GIFs, the videos, everything I posted online, they're still there, right? They're still there. I was so hyped for 2042 because it looked like a back to roots Battlefield. And then just before launch, they said, hey, there's no classes in this game. We have operators. That's right. Operators like Rainbow Six Siege. Massive step back. The gameplay wasn't as good. Moving to 120 players online sounded like a good idea, but in practice on console was just awful. It was an awful experience. And again, broken netcode. The jets didn't even have collision with buildings, meaning you could just bounce off buildings. So there was no risk to flying low. And overall, terrible experience. And that game had a rough launch, to say the least. Well, Vince Zampella comes out today and talks about how Battlefield, the next one for 2025 or 2026, it's going back to its roots of Battlefield 3 and 4. Now, that's great news, right? Battlefield 3, I think, was the Battlefield game that made the franchise pop off more than ever. Bad Company 1 and 2 were great, but when it comes to sales numbers, it was Battlefield 3. And I love the idea that they want to go back to the roots, but I do not trust EA. I don't like being a pessimist, but I don't trust EA at going back to roots. And yes, they have Criterion making single-player content for the new game. They have Motive Studio making single-player content for the game. DICE is doing the multiplayer. And their new studio is making a new experience, I'm doing air quotes, for Battlefield. So from the outside looking in, it does look like they are going to do a good job, right? We're going to get a full-on campaign again, apparently, proper multiplayer, and I'm guessing Battle Royale, because developers are obsessed with that at the minute for whatever reason. And I just have my doubts. Like, Logan, you were never into Battlefield, right?
Yeah, nah, this was a Call of Duty and a before it Medal of Honor household. Like I've dabbled in Battlefield. Love Bad Company 1 and 2.
Yeah.
Why they never made a third one is EA's guess. I because I have no idea why they never made a third one. But I when it launched. So I thought, you know what? I'll just wait and see if they fix it. They didn't even have a scorecard at the beginning, right?
Yeah, so Battlefield 2042. I could cry. This is so sad. Battlefield 2042 had no leaderboard. In a,
Like, how's that happen in 2024? How's that happen?
it's weird because Battlefield isn't the type of game where you kill you. It's not where you care about your KD ratio, right? Nobody in Battlefield cares. Call of Duty, it makes sense because you're running around with like you're running around like a hamster on acid, and that makes sense for Call of Duty. But for Battlefield, it's more of a methodical, slower experience, and it's all about capturing points. Like, it doesn't matter how many times you get, put down. It just matters that you get the job done. And there was no leaderboard. And it was horrible. Like, it was a bad experience, and just netcode was broken. It was awful. The maps were awful. Battlefield is famously known for having huge maps, and you spent maybe, I want to say 80% of each match just running. You'd spawn, run to a flag, spawn, run to the next area, and so on and so forth. So, as a Battlefield fan, we've been through it. It's been an awful time being a fan. Fortunately for me, I like Call of Duty as well, and it looks like this year we're getting a bloody good one. I love the Black Ops 6, multiplayer beta. It's everything I wanted from a multiplayer beta. Excellent gameplay, great map design. I mean, the gunplay is excellent. The sound, great. Graphics were better. The omnidirectional movement, which I bet Battlefield will copy the living hell out of. But yeah, I have faith in Activision when it comes to Call of Duty, but Battlefield and EA, I don't trust them. They have this heavy reliance on AI going forward, apparently. I mean, look, if you have AI making maps, I can't see that working for Battlefield. Battlefield's all about destruction, making your own way to where you want to go. That's one of the reasons why Battlefield 4 was kind of a step back, because it had less destruction. So if you have AI developing maps, and I don't want that. At least Black Ops 6 has competent developers making maps and not relying on AI. So yeah, EA, and I don't like hating on EA all the time. Some people get a kick out of it, of like hating on EA, but like they make Mass Effect. Which I love, and Jedi Survivor, Jedi Fallen Order. And by the way, it officially got confirmed today. The third Jedi game is officially in development, which, I mean, I bloody love. I love the fact that it just got kind of announced out of nowhere. So for me, I'm just worried about Battlefield going forward, because it's a franchise that used to be so good, and it's almost as if they just don't care anymore. I don't know. We'll have to talk about it again in the future. I'll sign up to the beta, the closed test program, because they need competent developers and people testing that game to actually tell them, how to play, how to make these games, because most of the people that made Battlefield 3, Battlefield 4, Battlefield Bad Company don't even work at DICE anymore. So, like,
I don't blame them.
yeah, I can't blame them either. It's like, why would you want to work there? One, you're getting treated like crap, and you're being forced to make games you don't want. Like, it's another one of these things where these companies are chasing trends, and that isn't going to be good for anyone. And speaking of chasing trends, let's move on. Uh, oh god, the misery never ends. So Bungie are making a game called Marathon. Now, this might shock people. I am actually looking forward to Marathon because I've been craving an extraction game on console. Unfortunately, there aren't many at the minute, and the ones that we do have, I'm going to go out the limb and say they are terrible experiences. I think Vigor, that's with a V, is terrible. It spawns you next to enemies that have been playing for years and months in these badly designed maps. It doesn't explain to you any of the gameplay mechanics, by the way. It's an awful experience. Then you have Hunt Showdown, which I haven't actually played. So we don't really have that. But Marathon is going to be a sci-fi extraction game. And we got some news today, and some people have taken this news. And by the way, I could take every opportunity to hate on Bungie and like say, oh, it's Sony's fault and all this stuff. But like, no, this is actually good news. So they came out, and apparently the game is going to be $40. And some people have came out and like freaked out, saying, "Oh, it should be free to play." Extraction games aren't free to play. Escape from Tarkov, you have to pay for it. That is the case with extraction games. And the game's going to have 2 maps. If people have never played or even seen an extraction game before, they tend to have just a few big maps, which each map consists of different zones where you have to do different objectives. So this game's going to have 2 maps. It's going to be $40, and it's going to offer, PvP and PvE experiences. Now, for me, this actually sounds like a good deal, especially as someone that wants an extraction game on console, and this is sci-fi, so it ticks multiple boxes for me. I wish Bungie the best. They've clearly had some problems over the past few years, being bought up by Sony and then laying off a bunch of developers. They don't know that Destiny 3 is ever going to be a thing. Destiny is in a weird place at the minute. At least content is coming. But for me, Marathon, I actually am excited for it. Logan, I know you don't really keep up with extraction games, but are you looking forward towards Marathon at all?
Not to be a wet blanket, but not at all, really. Um, you and I generally align on most things. This is one where I have different feel for it. Like to me, I understand the pricing's not a problem and it's comparable to extraction shooters, and okay, that makes sense. I understand that. But I'm a big vibes guy, and like reading the tea leaves and following patterns and trails and stuff like that. And to me, Bungie is dysfunctional and doesn't have their act together, and they're under immense pressure right now, all with all this other stuff in the background, and they had the pressure added onto them that y'all will forever be blamed for the cancellation of Last of Us Factions, whether it was accurate or not. And Concord was an absolute dumpster fire, and they've had other things come out recently, and Destiny's kind of in the state it is, and honestly, it feels like they've been kind of, to use a sports analogy, they've been like a blue blood that hasn't actually been good in quite some time, and it's just living on their name, and like this is gonna be really harsh in sports terms, but college football fans will know where I'm going here. But basically, they feel like Nebraska right now. Nebraska used to be a blue blood college football. They won at so many titles. They were so good all the time. And then they left their athletic conference and went to a different one. And they fell off a cliff and have been absolutely just downright awful until just recently they're starting to get their act together and looking finally like they have life again. But for a long time, they looked like they didn't have a pulse. They completely lost their identity, and the magic was gone. And that's what it feels like with Bungie for me. I hope I'm wrong. I love Halo, and obviously I respect them for their role in history. But to me, they seem like they're just living on a name at this point.
Yeah, I mean, you know me, I'm an optimist. It's just I'm craving an extraction game on console that I can just play by myself. You know? It's like I'm desperate times call for desperate measures because like it's sci-fi and it's kind of what I want. But I mean, yeah, Bungie aren't exactly in the best spot. It's like who knows what's going to happen with them. I mean, you've got to wonder what was Last of Us Factions like before it was cancelled. Or a Bungie just completely incompetent when it comes to thinking what would be a viable online service. Maybe we'll never know. You know what? We'll move on. So this just came out before the show went live. So Darksiders 2, which I personally really love. That game is getting a free next gen upgrade in October. October 15th. Ooh. And it's going to get ray tracing. Let me see. Ray tracing, advanced detail. And it didn't mention anything about frames per second. Now, I thought that was weird because the trailer is at 60 frames per second. So I'm thinking maybe they're just not talking about it. And it's going to be 60. Because at the minute on Xbox Series X, it is already 4K. Because it had its 1X enhancement back in like 2018, I believe. But anyway, the trailer they put out looks good. So if you're a fan of Darksiders 2, it's coming. And personally, I loved Darksiders 2. It's my favorite one of the trilogy or the quadrilogy if you're including Genesis. But I'll check it out. I'll post footage of it when it's available. But I love the fact that these games that came out years ago are still getting free upgrades. You know, some developers will charge full price for free for these upgrades, label them as remasters. I mean, some games they are locked behind a how should I put it? A cross-gen bundle, and I think the cross-gen bundle some games are doing that's a rip-off. Like if you're playing on Xbox Series X or PlayStation 5 and you're forced to buy a cross-gen bundle, why? Why do you want to own the last-gen version as well? Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. But hey, at least this is some good news. And if people haven't played Darksiders 2, honestly, I actually think it plays a lot like a Zelda game. Like it's a fun game. Like, Owen, did you ever play Darksiders 2?
I haven't played the second one, but I'm familiar with the franchise in general, and it's a lot like the God of War trilogy before they rebooted and
Yes.
changed style and tone and everything, and like a Dante's Inferno, which is criminally underrated, and games like that, and like you said, Zelda and stuff. It has a lot of exploration, a lot of combat, hack and slash, but also like combos and exploration, getting different gear to get better at stuff. Like they are really well done, and for them to give a free, next gen upgrade like this is really good PR, and I applaud them. Like I really like the studio, and this is just more goodwill, which never hurts.
Yeah, two was so good, and like, as much as we've crapped on Embracer in the past, which we have done a lot, I will say this: they do actually support games for a long time. You know, be it with free updates, patches, and also expansions. Like hell, Kingdoms of Amalur got an expansion. What 12 years, 11 years after the original game released. You know,
Pretty sizable one.
Yeah, Titan Quest got an expansion 10 years. Actually, it was maybe more than that. I think it was like 15 years after release. So, like, they clearly care about supporting content. It's just that Embracer itself is a bit weird. But hey, Darksiders 2 getting a free upgrade. That was the biggest Darksiders game, I believe, when it came to sales numbers. So maybe that's why they're starting with that one. But hey, there's a new game coming, free upgrade. And if people haven't played it, please do. It's an awesome game. Like Logan said, it's very much an old God of War style game, but with a bit of Zelda in there. It's got Metroidvania elements throughout the game. You'll get new weapons and abilities that'll let you access different areas. It's a good game. It really is. Anyway, we'll move on. We're about halfway through the show, or a little bit under. If you're enjoying it, please like, share, and subscribe. I hate doing these little ads, but we encourage you to do it. I should say I am on YouTube, and it's greatly appreciated. If you want to support the channel with super chats, that also helps out. Anyway, Logan, so some big game news dropped the other day, and it kind of came out of nowhere, and it happened at like 4 in the morning UK time. The studio behind a bunch of different indie games, Annapurna Interactive. Many people have played their games. Great games. I say that they are the A24 of video games.
100%.
And it turns out every single developer and worker for Annapurna Interactive got up and quit. Out of nowhere, because of apparently Annapurna not wanting to. Like, Logan, you know more about this than me. Like, what the hell happened? Because, like, the developers of all their games are scrambling, wondering what to do because there's no one to talk to over there.
Yeah, it's a ton, but basically, it was a collective. They were talking to Megan Ellison, who is like the owner of Annapurna, like the whole company and everything, where the publishers and studios are part of their operation. They also do film and other stuff. And they had been negotiating with her to try to reach a buyout agreement or something to basically get their independence and be free and spun out from Annapurna's operation. And they couldn't reach an agreement for whatever reason. Either it was a financial reason or a licensing reason. For some reason, they could not come to terms. So they all bandied together and said, you know what? We will all just collectively quit. And so they did. And absolutely do not hit that button unless you have a very, very good backup option. Because to me, that is a company that knows that, hey, we've got something really special and good here. We've got great connections in the industry and in film. Like, they also have done some really good adaptations of stuff. So for them to do this means that either option A, they go and they form their own thing, which is kind of what I'm thinking is going to happen, and they just call it something else, but it is basically what Annapurna was, or they have something lined up with some other places to hire them because you don't just go all of a sudden from trying to get your independence as a group to, well, I guess that's not going to work. We'll just quit and figure it out. Like, rational people wouldn't do that anyway. So that's kind of what it seems like right now. And on one hand, it's a bummer because Annapurna, like you said, is like the A24 neon like art house publisher. Like, we talk about Focus Home all the time, and they make incredible stuff, and I love their stuff, and they kind of cover a wider net. Then Annapurna really focuses in on like these kind of art house, like critically acclaimed darling, like kind of really unique and just interesting stuff, like a Kentucky Route Zero or a um, Man, Stray. Like they have many good games. So I really hope they get things together soon and we hear something soon because that is too talented of a group to just fade into nothing.
Yeah, hopefully they get that stuff sorted. It's weird because the game industry is it's kind of falling apart all around us. like, um, people are getting fired constantly. There's like studio acquisitions that are making people leave. There's things like this. Like it's all over the place. Um, who knows what's gonna be? Who knows what it's gonna be like a year from now? Like we just don't know. But hopefully it all gets sorted because again, that's a lot of work over there. So yeah, hopefully it gets sorted. You know what? This news just went live. Dragon's Dogma, and I think Dragon's Dogma 2 is just amazing. It's really incredible. It's the best way I can describe it is it's a mashup between Skyrim and The Witcher with a 1% Dark Souls, 1% Elden Ring. We'll go with that. Well, anyway, it's been patched constantly by Capcom. They've done a great job, giving a quality of life features which people have asked for. It's gotten performance updates. Basically, they fixed a lot of stuff that people want. But anyway, it's getting its biggest patch to date, and this one's going to interest a lot of people because it's getting a brand new casual mode. Now, the game can be exceedingly punishing at times because it's very physics based when it comes to the combat. You can hold on to enemies, but you have stamina. So if you're holding onto a giant eagle and, it flies off and you lose stamina, you're going to fall to the ground and lose everything. They're also going to change the weight balances for objects. You're going to be able to fast travel to one of the towns without buying port crystals. Port crystals are going to cost less, so it looks like they're actually fixing a lot of things. So it's going to make an already great game even better, which in my opinion, bloody phenomenal news. I love the game. I think the developers have done a fantastic job with it. Logan, you haven't played the game yet, have you?
I have not jumped in yet. I've had quite the backlog and new stuff keeps coming out, but it is one I do have interest in playing.
Yeah, it's a good game. I mean, there's not really anything bad I could say about it other than the fact that it can be punishing, but with that type of game, like I think people expect it. But hey, if people want to play it on an easier mode, it looks like that's going to happen. I was actually surprised it didn't launch with that because the original game had two difficulty modes when you started the game. It had easy and normal, and then you unlocked the hard mode, I believe. But yeah, all that stuff's coming. Pretty cool stuff. You know what? Let's talk about this stuff now. So, Transformers. These games were listed by Microsoft to be put through certification on the Australian Ratings Board a few weeks ago. Now, people are still trying to find out whether this is real, whether it was a hoax, because some people could just be trolls and do it themselves. It's a bit of a mess when it comes to Transformers, but people have been theorizing for a while that, well, Microsoft, they have Activision now, and even though these are licensed titles, it is something Hasbro wants. Hasbro is about to launch Transformers 1, which people are loving at the minute in early reviews. I personally think the film looks pretty good. So like Transformers games on the market, there aren't really many. And the ones that are out are basically children's games. Not that there's anything wrong with them, but if you've seen them, they are blatantly meant for like 5-year-olds. But anyway, the Cybertron games, they're beloved. People want them to come back. I think it will happen. And another reason why I do think it'll happen is that Singularity, another Activision game, which came out in, I think, 2011 or something like that. It is very much, that might be 2010, it was very much a Bioshock style game. So if you like Bioshock, you know what you're getting with this game. It's a first-person shooter game where you have this gauntlet that controls time. You can also manipulate objects. So if you see like a broken bridge and you need to get across, you can rewind time and the bridge is back together. Magical stuff. And that's kind of the gameplay loop of that game. It's actually a really cool first-person shooter. and it got its first listing on the Xbox store basically in years. So it was available on Xbox 360, and I should know I bought it when it was on the store before the 360 store on the console itself shut down. However, Xbox One and PC game art looks very different to 360 store art. So the store that got the listing has new art, which we haven't seen on the store before. So it leads to believe that it's coming back. So with all the whole Activision stuff being happening over the past few, years, months, or whatever, along with the Transformers things, like we could potentially be getting a Activision Game Pass drop this year. Other people have inferred, I think Jez Corden may have said something like this, I can't remember, but that the Transformers games are actively being worked on. It looks like it's happening. Logan, I know you and me have both been hyped about Activision games coming back. A lot of people are hyped about Transformers games in particular, but for me, I never got to play the Transformers games. I will be there day one. But for me, Singularity was awesome. For more people to be able to play that, and me to be able to play it on a modern Xbox will be great. What's your take on this? Because it looks like things are moving forward.
Yeah, I'm thrilled, and hopefully, fingers crossed that, knock on wood, that it goes through and it and back, and you get Transformers games back. Maybe those Marvel Ultimate Alliance 1 and 2, or at the very least, the Bethesda games that were made by id that somehow had licensing with Activision. Like, you own them all now. Surely it is not that difficult to get that figured out and put it on consoles again. And yeah, like you said, the artwork is different, so that raises questions. It's like, is it they simply just, sometimes things get relisted and the artwork changes? Or, a lot of the time it's because it's a different format or something like that. So would this be like a remaster, a port, a remake? You would think we would have heard about something like that by now, but you never know. But like, surely they got to make it BC at this point, at the least, or do something with the game to make it where Xbox people can play it again. Because I'll tell you right now, like Gauntlet Throne, if this is just a straight up PC port and Xbox users don't get to play this, just like the stunt they pulled with Return to Castle Wolfenstein and Quake 4 and a few other of the games after they acquired the companies, but they didn't make them BC, you're royally pissed your console fan base. And that's not a good look. You want to make the games compatible. You have the IPs. You want to make them playable to everybody everywhere. You talk a good game on backwards compatibility and saying you want to make sure things carry forward and go forward. But if you own them and you make it only PC when I have perfectly good copies physically or digitally just sitting right over there that could play on a console with a flick of a switch or a few other things done, and you don't do that and you make it only PC, which some have theorized, then yeah, that's problems. And I really hope that's not it.
Yeah, that is a weird one because the reason why I don't think that'll be the case, and if it is, like, I'd be livid. Before we continue, excuse me, with the topic, we have the first super chat of the day by your baby father. Thank you very much for the $10. He says, "I'm at work. I'll listen to the replay on my drive home. You guys are great on the show. Keep going, guys." Well, thank you very much for that. It's greatly appreciated. And yeah, right now it's like 1,000,000 degrees in my house. So like doing a podcast next to a PC, it's excruciating because in the UK we don't have this thing called air conditioning. That mythical thing. Like,
Primitive. What is wrong with you?
I mean, let's say it as a trade-off. Americans don't use kettles for some reason. British people don't have air conditioning.
Yeah, I mean, I guess.
But I mean, hell, with a kettle, you get to boil water with with no air conditioning. I'm melting in my leather chair right now. So like, I'm losing out. But yeah, thank you for the 10-year baby. Greatly appreciated. When it comes to the whole Singularity thing,
Yeah, thank you.
I very much pay attention to game art and like what's what, because look, we all say this every single day. You log onto Twitter, there's at least one person talking about how they found out that Transformers Fall of Cybertron is listed on Xbox Live. And I want to put my face through a window. Do you know why? Because it's never left the store, right? It never left, right? They pulled the ability to buy it, but it's never left the store. Same with Deadpool, same with Transformers Devastation, same with TMNT, whatever that game was called. But these games never got delisted fully. You can still view them. You can look at the game art, and if you have the game disc or if you bought it digitally, congratulations, you can still play those games. And plus, those tweets get likes very easily. Right? I've seen this.
It's easy, mate.
Yeah, it's easy, right? Like I've seen the same people post the same thing like a month later. Oh, Transformers Fall of Cybertron is listed. It's like, shut up. Right? Like, it never left. Like, jeez. It really annoys me. However, Singularity, the 360 game, had 360 store art, and when I bought it, again, 360 store art, and the 360 version is fully delisted from Xbox Live. You can't even search it now because the store shut down. So it never even had Xbox One art, and it never even had Windows store art. So the fact that it's got a Windows store art listing and it hasn't been available on Steam in a lot of countries for a very long time, I'm just putting it out there. I'm thinking we'll be getting the 360 version on console, and the PC version is going to be on the Windows Store. That's the way I see it. We've heard from people in the past that, yes, there's a BC Activision batch happening. I mean, with those Activision games, that's easy money right there. Do you know when the ABK, FTC, ABC deal all went through? Cybertron was trending in the UK. All because of the Activision deal. People love those Transformers games. And like, while people were talking about, hey, what if, Call of Duty content was exclusive on Xbox? The back of my mind, I'm going, how about them Cybertron games? Like I talk about old games all the time. Ones I missed out on, ones I want to replay. And for me, like, I want to play Activision back catalog. Hell, I want to be able to play Call of Duty Ghosts without paying full price 9 years later. Oh no, it'll be 11 years later now. Jeez. Call of Duty games, old ones, never drop in price. I don't know why. It's a bit silly. But hey, we'll probably be talking about this next week because Activision stuff, maybe even at TGS. Whenever I've talked about TGS, by the way, people keep bringing up Transformers. I don't know if Transformers is big in Japan or not.
Mechs, dude.
Nah,
they're huge.
Yeah, that's a good point. So maybe we will see Transformers there. Especially with Transformers 1 out, people are going nuts. Anyway, we'll move on. We'll quickly talk about this because it's it's been really annoying. So the PlayStation 4 Pro was announced literally before last week's show went live. And, I personally feel that Pro consoles this time around aren't really... They aren't necessary. The consoles we have now are perfectly fine. That goes towards a PlayStation. The consoles we have are great, right? They just need better optimized games. A lot of developers in the past have proven that, hey, their game may come out at 30, but then we get a patch later on and it's 60. Look at A Plague Tale Requiem. It came out at 30, people were up in arms about the frame rate, and then they patched it. And then nobody batted an eye. I think throwing hardware at a problem this time isn't going to work. You're always going to have developers that will choose 30. Rockstar's going to push these consoles as far as they can for visuals because the normies, they care about pretty graphics. They don't care about frame rate. I will stand by that. So while I do prefer playing games at 60, there's people that can't even tell. It might sound weird, but that's just the truth. But anyway, I think the Pro console situation this time around doesn't make much sense. I think that, yeah, I just saw maybe Jamie doesn't read chat. I do read chat. It's slow this week for some reason. I don't get it. I think there's something wrong with YouTube. I'm actually having a delay in when they're popping up. Normally, in chat, there's like a constant roll of notifications of chats, and this week I have these blank spaces and then a chat. So I don't know what's happening. I have all of that turned on. It's weird. Hopefully I can get it sorted during the show. Anyway, YouTube, it's a great platform, but sometimes the chat is completely broken and I want to strangle myself. Anyway, so the PlayStation 5 Pro price was announced at $700. That is expensive. That is very expensive. People that keep talking about the prices of phones. Do you know why talking about the price of phones doesn't make sense? Because a phone is a necessary device. Everyone uses their phone for hours a day. You use it to listen to music, watch movies, play video games on it, use it as a compass. Maybe you still have that old beer app on it where you can pretend you have a beer in your phone. Like, that was magical. Maybe you have Paper Toss from back in the day, or one of those old iOS games. Like, a phone is a necessary device. You can use it for everything. It's an email. It's a text. It's a call. You can phone people on it. A console it's a luxury item, right? It doesn't matter if it costs £10 or £1 billion. It's a luxury item. Video games in general aren't cheap. Like $70 for a video game is a lot of money to ask, especially considering we get told that we aren't paying enough. We get nickeled and dimed with microtransactions, and these developers still want to raise the price of video games. And I think that these consoles being $700 is opening up Pandora's box, because the second that happened, people start talking about how much next-gen consoles are going to cost. Oh, Jamie, of course, next-gen is going to cost $700. And it infuriates me, because do you know what nobody was talking about before the Pro was revealed? The cost of next-gen consoles. Nobody was talking about next-gen costing $700. Nobody. But it's now that console's out there and it's priced that much, it's setting people's expectations up for when next gen is announced. Because think about it, is Sony really going to announce a next gen console that costs less than their current mid gen upgrade? That was a mouthful. No, it would sound silly. So I think they are testing the waters with price, because all these publishers and developers are wanting to raise the prices on us on everything. So like Logan, what's your take on this? Because I think a $700 console is really setting up the future for an expensive future.
Yeah, this is to me this is a test the market and how much you can squeeze out of your fan base that you already have squeezed pretty good. And not very many people are talking about it, but they quietly raised the prices of controllers again and some other stuff right before the PS5 Pro announcement went live. So, and this is right after they had already raised the prices several times of the PS5. This is the first generation since when I've been around that I can remember anyway, where the console prices have gone up instead of down. Like, isn't that insane to you? Like, I know that economic times are what they are, but it's crazy. And, you know, it's just passing the buck off to the customers. And $700 for a console that doesn't even have that you're too cheap to even throw in a stand or a disk drive in, and it's a slight upgrade over an undercooked hardware as is. Are you kidding me? $700 for that? Like, man, it's you're on some serious hopium there. And I just, man, I don't know. I I'm seeing them putting that out for $700, and then the next gen console, the PS6, being anything less than that, unless quote they see the massive bleep show this has been online, and they decide to backtrack and try to find a needle the thread for the pricing for next gen. I remain skeptical. This being Sony, they don't exactly backtrack very much, and they are all about the money. So I'm gonna say you're probably looking at the 800 to 1 grand console for next gen from Sony at the very least, unless they pivot. But yeah, it's a bad look. I've seen absolutely shameless, unhinged behavior supporting this. And we're not the only ones who noticed. A certain parody site has been on Peter lately. It's on PS5 content alone. So yeah, I hope it's not a sign of things to come, but gotta tell you, it kind of does feel that way.
Yeah, you know what? I'll mention it. The parody website Hard Drive absolutely went in on Jeff Keighley because Jeff Keighley made 14 posts in a row on the PlayStation 5 Pro, and it's his job.
Down bad.
Yeah, the thing is, it's his job to post this stuff. Like, there's nothing actually wrong with him, but it was like 14 posts in a row, and then he posted about Xbox layoffs, but he never once posted about Sony layoffs. Like, it looks odd from the outside looking in. You know, hell, remember Gamescom where Genshin Impact was finally announced for Xbox, and he mumbled it out of the side of his mouth. And then when Indiana Jones was announced for PlayStation, he may as well have had fireworks going off. He may as well have been doing jazz hands with dancers behind him. Like, it was so blatantly obvious. And Hard Drive, they went in on Jeff Keighley. And let's just say Jeff Keighley replied to Hard Drive. It wasn't a good look. He got reassured by Hard Drive. I'll just put it that way. But yeah, the price of this thing's ridiculous. And let's say if you don't live in the US, oof, that price. Like 700.
Isn't it like 1,200 for you guys?
Yeah, so so I'll just do the conversion from pounds to dollars. So the console itself in the UK works out at $914. The disc drive works out as an extra $100, and the stand works out at about I think it's $39 extra. So you're looking at a lot of money, and yes, you can get an iPhone for the price of this console. Which is, and by the way, another thing when people bring up iPhones and just smartphones in general, the amount of technology they have to cram into such a small device, that's why it costs a lot as well. So people bringing up consoles and mobile phones, stop it. And if you really want 4K, 60, ray tracing, all that stuff turned up to the max for every single game, you are gonna have to get a PC, right? Console gaming is never going to be on the this back in the 360 era and before that. Consoles always came out and they were more powerful than PCs, but during the 7th generation, especially in the 7th half, these companies, graphics card and CPU manufacturers and whatnot, they were actually advancing technology every year, putting out new software and hardware to the point where PCs back in 2010 or whatever, like those games still look great, and like the advancement of console technology isn't like that. We get a new console once every. It used to be once every 5 years or 6 years, and developers would just make games for it, and then throughout the generation, the consoles would go down in price, the manufacturing costs would go down in price, and also they would make slims, which would cost less. So everyone won in the end. But this time around, it's not like that. Consoles aren't going down in price. Consoles went up this generation because, screw us, right? Except the US. By the way, these companies, they are terrified about raising the price of consoles in the US. Do you know why? Because you guys are actually vocal. That's right. There's way more of you that play video games as opposed to Europeans or Japanese people. Like a lot of gamers in the US would not stand for this. So that's why the price hasn't gone up in the US. This price is absurd. Like 100. By the way, do you know that disc drive you pay $100 for? That thing costs like $15 to make, max.
The whole thing is highway robbery.
Yeah.
It is just absolutely just despicable.
Yeah.
I get you got to make money, and it is a business, but I mean, at some point, come on, man. Like, have some shame. Like, come on, that is just outrageous.
Yeah, it's awful because, the second I saw that price, I knew it's just gonna set up unless Microsoft comes out in 2026 and they say hey, their next gen console is 500, because the past two consoles, well, to say three consoles for Microsoft, they've all been 500. The Xbox One, albeit it came out with a Kinect, it was $500. The Xbox One X was $500, and then the Xbox Series X, also $500. And honestly, I think for the price as to what you're getting, I think $500 is the perfect price point. And people will bring up inflation. Do you know why bringing up inflation doesn't work? It's because people aren't getting paid more. There's people that are still making the same wage now in that position as they were 10 years ago. So bringing up inflation makes no sense. And I know Jeff Keighley brought up inflation, and he didn't include the disk drive, by the way. People...
Funny how that works.
Yeah, it's so funny. But it's just it makes me look at the gaming space right now, and we're being nickel and dimed constantly. And people have to put the foot down. If people don't want expensive consoles, don't buy it. The consoles we have now are perfectly fine. Has anyone really played God of War or Horizon Forbidden West? Yeah, Forbidden West. Has anyone really played those games and thought, wow, this is blurry? I've got Vaseline all over the screen right now. Nobody said that. And these games have performance modes, which look fine, right? I played Alan Wake 2 on performance mode and on quality mode. Looked perfectly fine on both. The main reason I chose quality is because it's a slower, more methodical paced game, so it doesn't really matter at the end of the day. Same with Jedi Survivor. Plus, that game is very pretty. I did just really unnecessary, pieces of hardware, mid-gen refreshes. Like last time, there was excitement because we had the whole 720p, 900p thing for 4 years or 5 years. And, 4K TVs start coming into the fray. So Microsoft had to come out with something. And the One X had this hype behind it because we went from 720p games to native 4K Red Dead Redemption 2. That was a colossally huge... That's why Xbox One X consumers were so happy with that console, because the games looked amazing. And it was
a gem.
Yeah. And by the way, that console feels like you could knock out the Big Show with it. Right? It is the densest console I have ever owned. Part of me always thought, okay, if I open this up, is it going to be filled with lead? You know, it's like it's unusually heavy for such a small console. Like maybe there's some magic going on there, but it's just filled with cement or something. You could use it as a dumbbell, but it was impressive hardware and it was needed. This time around, nobody really cares, right? You know when this generation first started, like I was thinking, oh, ray tracing to the max and everything. Let me tell you, ray tracing, as pretty as it is, it's not worth the sacrifice in performance. It really isn't. I will take 4K at a higher frame rate than ray tracing. Ray tracing only looks good in things like Minecraft, which you'd think it wouldn't work, but it looks better. But yeah, if people don't want a mid-gen refresh or $700 consoles, don't support this. Their consoles they have right now are perfectly fine. Just wanted to talk about that quickly because people need to be vocal, and vote with the wallet. And if this console comes out and it's a huge success, it will literally cost people an arm and a leg next generation. And next generation isn't really that far away. Anyway, we'll move on. Square Enix, they just have the sale on Xbox Live at the minute, and I think that, and Logan thinks this as well, that it is a bit odd that, Tokyo Game Show is just around the corner. Xbox is going this year, Square Enix is going this year, and there's a Final Fantasy sale on Xbox, where all of the ones on Xbox right now are on sale, other than the 360 games. For some reason, those 360 Final Fantasy games are never on sale. I don't know why. Maybe it's some weird glitch thing, but either way, could this be pointing towards Final Fantasy announcements at Tokyo Game Show? I'm leaning towards yes. Xbox has been included in their multi-platform strategy going forward. Multiple people, including Jez from Windows Central, have said the quote-unquote whole slate, including 7 Remake, is coming. So, my theory is, 7 Remake, I don't think that's going to be announced at the show. I don't think that's coming. I think that will be a thing at some point, but I think it's unrealistic to think, hey, they're going to do a splash screen and say, this game, that game, and this game are coming to Xbox, just whatever. And, Phil Spencer comes out and on stage and, shrugs his shoulders and says, I've did it. I don't think that's going to happen. However, I do think 16 and pixel remasters will be there in some capacity when relating to Xbox, because 16 just launched today on PC. I've seen some PC footage. Looks really nice. It looks like the stars have aligned, and I don't want to say it's too good to be true. I just think there's enough there to make me think it's happening. Logan, what's your take? Because the sale, everything going on, people from Xbox really hyping up this Tokyo Game Show. Something's got to be going on.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a big show. I think they're treating it kind of like a Gamescom or E3 Lite. They seem to be going really all in on this, more than they normally do. And the fact that execs are flying out, they're, getting a lot of momentum going with marketing, advertising, social media engagement. There's all this buzz about certain franchises coming to the platform or coming back. And the sales, it's just, everything's aligning. Like you, I don't think 7 is going to be there. I do think it will happen and it will come to Xbox. But I have a feeling there is still some negotiating to be done on that. Or maybe wait till the whole trilogy is out before they release it. But I do think it will come to the platform. But I do think 16 and Pixel remasters will be there. And I do think a few other Square games that had not been on Xbox for whatever reasons, like say a Valkyrie Rising, or a Ogre Tactics, or something like that, will come over as well.
Yeah.
And then, Capcom's been a good partner. Wouldn't be surprised if maybe Jez gets his little Monster Hunter Stories game he's been always asking for, or a few other smaller things. Maybe the Mega Man collection that some people were pretty missed the platform. I think it's gonna be a good show.
Yeah, I do think that we will actually see the Final Fantasy IX remake there.
Ooh.
Because that thing's been like rumored for like 2 years now, and apparently it's the same style of remake as the Crisis Core Reunion. Where I've talked about that game to no end. Like, I love that game. They did a phenomenal job with it. Every character in that game is fully voiced now. The graphics have been rebuilt. The only thing they really reuse from the original PSP game is the game structure and the CGI cutscenes, which are upscaled to 4K, and they did a great job with that. But I think that will be the Kingdom Hearts. Kingdom Hearts 4 was revealed 2.5 years ago, and we've had nothing since, like absolutely nothing. And I think it's time for that to be revealed. You know, Kingdom Hearts is big in Japan, so that kind of makes sense. But like I said, I do think 16 and Pixel remasters is like, it's a no-brainer, right? I bet my cat could port those games over, right? Those games are ancient, right? They just need to get them to work on Xbox with achievements. Job done. But yeah, 16 mainly. You know, I think that, you know, Square, they have to commit to Xbox, and they have said they are committing to Xbox, but we need to see it because, and people have actually had a problem with me saying this, but Square Enix needs to earn back the trust of Xbox fans. They really
But they
do.
were on the list for a long time.
Yeah. Because like people have actually replied to me like, why would Square Enix need to earn Xbox players' trust when Final Fantasy 16, 7 remake, and all these games are so good? It's like, we've had sporadic releases on Xbox for almost a decade now. We get over a decade. We had 13, which was divisive. I love 13, by the way. And then we get 15, which was also divisive, which I really like 15. But then we get like Stranger of Paradise, Final Fantasy Origins, Crisis Core Reunion, which is actually a prequel to the remake, and we get like just weird one-off games, and it's so strange because like, you aren't going to garner a fan base by treating them like crap, and keep making exclusivity deals with Sony. It's not working, right? If these games were selling like the hotcakes people are pretending they are, Square wouldn't have to put them on other platforms. Hell, I hope, and I really hope, that Square Enix, they put these games on Xbox, PC, and also the Switch 2 or Super Switch. Like, that's how they're gonna move forward. And I just find it funny that people will bring up the cost of ports. We have to move away from the idea that the porting of a game to Xbox costs like $50 million or something. It's just not. PlayStation and Xbox, it's the same architecture. It's x86. It's not that complicated. People just need to stop pretending that. Final Fantasy games will sell on Xbox if we get them regularly and if they actually market them. Because marketing, that's everything. But yeah, I think TGS, this may be the biggest one to date for Xbox. And here's my pie in the sky wish. It's not going to happen, but I'm wishing it. I would love Lost Odyssey to be remastered. It's already available, so people can play it, but it's not in Game Pass for whatever reason. But I would just love the ability to play that at a higher resolution, at a higher frame rate, but also with quality of life improvements. That game I love. I adore Lost Odyssey, but that game is excruciatingly hard. Like, it is so difficult that the first main boss you fight in that game is one of the hardest in the game. The big blue worm. Right? I think I had nightmares about that back in the day. It was terrible. Just like quality of life features, just to make it a little bit easier, and also not having to switch like between 4 discs would be nice for a physical version. But they can get all that stuff done. Anyway, we'll move on. You know what? Starfield. I think Starfield's going to be huge because it did really good at launch. I did see Paul Tassi from is it The Verge or whatever? Uh,
Orbs.
yeah, Forbes. That's it. My bad. So like, he was talking about how what's the attach rate on Xbox going to be like, considering people are playing it for free. And I thought that is a bit closed-minded way of thinking, because before the game came out, there were over 1 million people playing it. Starfield. Meaning that people weren't playing it via Game Pass. People were playing it via the Premium Edition upgrade and the premium version of the game. So like, instantly the expansion has at least 1 million sales already. So like, the install base comment made no sense. And like, I'm not a paid journalist, and even I know this, right? So yeah, at least 1 million sales for the expansion. I purchased the premium edition, so like, I have the expansion ready to go. It looks fantastic. It really does. It is one planet. The whole expansion takes place on one planet. It's handmade content. So the best part of Starfield, it's literally this whole planet. You're going to get to use the rover, which is already released in this game. You are going to be able to leave the planet whenever you want to continue to do other quests. You're not locked into just that one planet. But House Varun, we've always heard about this through the main game, haven't seen it, and like, you get attacked if you go to that system or near it. So like, I should say near where that system's meant to be. Uh, but that won't be a problem now. And it's all about fixing a problem with some sort of catastrophe which has caused time and space to break. That's right up my alley, because I love sci-fi. And Starfield, for me, it's like, I've got, a little bit of Interstellar in there, a little bit of Ad Astra, and a tiny little snippet of Alien when it comes to the alien wildlife in that game. I think they were called Terramorphs. I love that game. The expansion looks great. Logan, what's your take? Because this is handcrafted content, and it pretty much none of it's procedural.
Yeah, I am super stoked for this. It looks awesome. I love that they're going into the dark, kind of scarier vibes of space, and like no one can hear you scream kind of thing. And just House Varun was really, really messed up and crazy cult like, just fanatical. Like, if you read their lore or did some of the faction quests and stuff that gave you more insight into them, or you became a close companion to Asia, you learned even more. And it is wild. So the fact that they're having a whole big expansion focused on them and finally getting to see where they're from and the whole Great Serpent thing and all that, it's really exciting. And I can't wait. It sounds like they're going to introduce some new critters that are going to be really scary, like a new monster that's supposed to, surpass the Terramorph. So looking forward to that. And my hope is not only is this a great expansion story wise and like narrative wise and for like moving the plot along and stuff like that, but also like, you remember when this dates us, but you remember when Oblivion had Shivering Isles,
Oh
or
yeah,
Skyrim had the Dawn Guard, or Dragonborn, like expansions. Like, not only did they add meaty new sections and areas to explore and go to, like Solstheim or whatever, it added a whole bunch of gameplay, like fundamental changes to the whole experience of Oblivion and Skyrim. And to me, I think this expansion is going to be paving the way and is going to do that to where it's not only going to be a story expansion with new quests and characters and stuff, but it's going to fundamentally change and enhance Starfield as a whole. Like add new mechanics and fluff the planets to be a little more lively and just add more to explore and maybe tweak combat or some other things that people have been wanting. Like I think this will be a fundamental revamp of Starfield and I'm very excited.
Yeah, it's good to see like Starfield continue to evolve, and I think that game had weirdly like uh unjustified hate, like when it came out.
Yes, it was derangement syndrome.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and like these posts are still available. Like if you go back to any post of me just like posting a clip of playing that game, the replies are just people angry. Hell, like I've been posting on Threads, the Facebook's alternative to Twitter, once every like few days now, and I posted about Starfield last week, turning 1 years old. I had like 50 replies on a on an app that next to nobody uses, and a bunch of the replies on Threads, they were angry, man, angry that I said something positive about Starfield. I keep using the term forced hate because like, if you go to any of my posts, the replies, like, nobody is forcing these people to reply to me when I talk about Starfield. Like, I'm enjoying Starfield, blah blah blah. Like, these people get angry, and it's all over enjoyment, and it really infuriates me. And I've been doing this thing on purpose, and I did this when the game came out. I'd find an ice-ridden planet or whatever, and I would literally just find my objective, and I'd post maybe 30 seconds of my character walking, looking at the sunset. Right? I did this on purpose to see the reaction I would get online, and it actually works. People were like, "You're just walking. Oh my god, you're just walking." But these people have no problem of a video of just Spider-Man swinging down the street. It's the same thing. You're just moving in a straight line. One's on the ground, one's swinging from a web. Nobody cares. But people were just like angry about that game, and we all know why. Jealousy. People were angry for the first time in a long time that they couldn't play a new Bethesda RPG on their favorite platform, because why is it that these Bethesda gameplay mechanics became old the second one of these games were exclusive to Microsoft? Nobody complained about Fallout 4's base gameplay mechanics. Nobody. Fallout 76 had its issues, but people weren't complaining about Bethesda gameplay mechanics. So the straw that broke the camel's back just happened to be Starfield? And the reason why none of that stuff makes sense is because Fallout 4 was number one in the UK and across Europe when the Fallout TV show came out. So people clearly have no problem with Bethesda's old gameplay mechanics. It just works. It's their thing, and like people just hate positivity, and like I loved Starfield. Was it perfect? No. Is any game like I talk about Mass Effect on a daily basis. I love that game, right? I could list maybe 100 things about that game I would want to change that I don't like. Yet I still love the game. I'm somewhat borderline obsessed with that franchise. But like people just get angry, and it's this thing I've noticed over the past few years specifically that positivity in the gaming space is not allowed. Hell, the other day I was talking about New World Eternum, which I forgot to bloody talk about this week. I'll talk about that next week. But New World Eternum, I enjoyed the beta. I've had footage go on during this show, and what can I say? It's a damn good MMO on a console. And I like a few people called me a shill. Like, yes, I'm an Amazon shill. Yes, I've made 3 posts.
Jeff Bezos bankroll.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I bloody wish. Like, yes, I will take some of Jeff Bezos' money. But no, like I've made 4 posts about New World Eternum since it was announced for console. What, 3 months ago? Because I talk about upcoming games. But like, just the fact I was called a shill. But guess what? If I was hating on the game, if I was hating on the beta, nobody would have said anything. Nobody would have batted an eye. It's because if you're positive about a game and you enjoy something, people don't hate it. And to that, I'm just compared that these people are assholes, right? They're genuine assholes that they force themselves to just eat up negativity when it like all these clickbait channels, clickbait YouTubers, clickbait content, like they like forced hate constantly. Yeah, if you enjoy something, you're in the wrong. I'm actually frankly sick of it, right? Hell, even actual journalists, which will remain nameless, have been annoyed at me in the past just because I've been positive towards video games, and it's annoying, right? It's annoying. Like I could spend all like I put this. I've talked about Mass Effect Andromeda. I've talked about how I didn't like it in the end. Do you know what I've never done? I've never gone out there on Twitter and bashed the game openly. If people want to enjoy that game for what it is, I'll let them enjoy that game. But the second I start being positive about video games, I'm in the wrong. I'm a shill. I shouldn't be talking about this stuff. Yet people will watch these clickbait asshole YouTuber, whatever, and it's fine. It's fine to hate the game 24/7. It's fine. But yeah, the second I start liking something, I'm in the wrong. I like Starfield because it provides me a sci-fi experience unlike I've ever played in a video game before. I'm in the wrong. I like Starfield's combat. I'm in the wrong. I'm looking forward towards this expansion. I'm in the wrong. Arseholes. Every single one of them. And it's annoying. It's annoying because it happens on a daily basis. And, I'm a positive person when it comes to gaming. And, like, why are people so obsessed with wanting negativity in their feed? Why do you have to dislike everything? Every single game that comes out at the minute, negativity. Hell, you get called like bad things just for liking stuff, and it's so annoying. That's why I try and be, 99% of my posts on Twitter and pretty much everything on YouTube, I'm being positive, talking about something positive. I will talk about things negative if I have to, because I'm not going to sugarcoat stuff. But at the minute, I'm fairly happy as a gaming consumer and a gaming content creator. But it's annoying. You're just not allowed to like stuff. And that's that. But anyway, Starfield's expansion looks pretty good. Yeah, we'll talk about the Leonardo stuff another time because I haven't fully read into it. But like, I will say this: some game developers saying that they aren't going to put games on Xbox because there's not enough people playing these games in Japan. That is a weird oversight because they get the majority of their sales in the US, in Europe. So that has always been a dumb reason. Like, would it be great if?
Yeah.
Sorry, what were you saying?
No, I was just gonna say I completely agree. It would be like a company going like just think about it on its face. Like it's like, man, I make this many billions or millions of dollars every year selling this product, but for some reason people in this country who want to buy it instead of the people in my own. I guess I should quit making it. Like, what kind of system? You want the money. I'm like, why do you care? Where? I don't know. You're right. It's just dumb.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense. Like I I love JRPGs, but I just don't get many to play. Right? And every single time one of these games skip Xbox, like, one, I can't buy the game on my preferred platform, so I can't support the game. And two, it's not my job for Xbox sales to sell well in Japan. The developer, like, who give? It just makes no sense, man. It's a weird scenario. It's like, ideally, yes, Xbox would be selling great in Japan, but like, these developers, they see their own numbers. The majority of their sales don't even come from Japan, so it's a moot point. It doesn't make any sense. All people need to keep doing on Twitter is keep requesting these games. Give the games attention. No hate to the developers. Just let them know that you want these games because There's so many games that can come to the platform. They just need to pay attention to the fan base. You know what? Let's quickly talk about this. So Phil Spencer once again came out and said he wanted a Xbox handheld. Now, we've heard the rumors in the past that Xbox is going to be making a Xbox handheld, and if you asked me 5 years ago, I would have said that I would have just laughed. Like, what, you want to do a handheld and you're not called Nintendo? Not going to happen. But the Steam Deck basically came out and popularized the non-Nintendo handheld, and now everyone does a PC handheld. LG has a few different ones. The ROG Ally is popping off at the minute. One of my friends has one, and he talks about it all the time. And they are really cool devices. You know, it's also filled in a gap, because if you wanted to play PC games on the go, you had one option: overpriced gaming laptops. And now you can buy a Steam Deck or any of the other PC handhelds, and it's a good option for people. But now, Phil Spencer and I assume other developers and publishers, they are noticing people on console have been requesting a handheld. People have been wanting an Xbox handheld for decades now. People have been wanting one since the OG Xbox days. And realistically, we're at a point now with the technology, they could do that. So honestly, and if people were listening to Boomstick's podcast earlier today, me and him on the same frame of mind of this. I honestly think that the Xbox handheld is real. I think it comes out next year, a whole year before Xbox starts their next gen stuff, because that will obviously be pushing tech. They'll obviously have some AI features for upscaling and stuff, but that will get people in the door when it comes to handheld stuff on Xbox, because Xbox has something over PlayStation and Nintendo, something they don't do: backwards compatibility. If this native Xbox handheld is a thing, you're going to be able to play Xbox games, 360, Xbox One, Xbox Series games, your entire library on the go using free cloud saves, and it's going to be a great device. And I think it's an exciting time, for that like subgenre of console. Again, that's how I think it's going to play out. So I think they'll probably announce it this year, get the hype up, because the problem with the Xbox Series X announcement is that when they announced it in December 2019, it basically killed off Xbox One sales. So, like, while it was really cool to talk about for a whole year, essentially, nobody was buying Xbox Ones. Everyone was saving up for, the Xbox Series X. So, and that makes sense, But if they announce a handheld, like, that isn't really going to impact the Series X sales. They aren't going to do a mid-gen refresh, so all their focus will be on this handheld that is coming out next year and the home consoles they already have out in the wild. So, like, nobody loses and everyone wins. Logan, what's your take? Because Phil Spencer's keep mentioning this time and time again, and to me, at least, it makes sense.
Yeah, I think it's a matter of when, not if. For the handheld, I think it's 100% happening for Xbox. My question is not only when it comes out, like, what are the specs they're going for in the pricing? Like, would they be trying to make it to where it's like a true like next gen, like it's a PS6 equivalent, an Xbox, Series X2 equivalent, or would it be kind of like a halfway point to where it'd be like almost like a pro console, or would it be like maybe a lesser powerful, like maybe like a Series S specs, or in between an S and an X specs for a handheld? Like, I'm just curious what all they would be able to pack into it. Like, I'll get one. I for sure one. I love even playing my cloud device, and my LG cloud device. I love it. Is it the best thing around? No, but it works really well for when I have Wi-Fi and stuff. If I could get basically an Xbox Steam Deck or Xbox Switch that played my games natively, and Wi-Fi or not, and on the go and stuff, I'd 100% be down for that, even if it was just Series S specs. And because I've just always wanted something like that. Since like the 360 days, I always sat there and I was like, man, you know, it's like I'm here and I'm playing this game, but now we got to go out and do errands or I got to go on a trip or this. I'll just switch to my Game Boy for the road trip or something like that. And imagine if we had had the ability to keep those games going on the go then. Like, it's always been a dream of mine, and I'm 100% for it.
Yeah, like you said, I think it's a matter of if, not when. I should say when, not if. I'm all over the place today. Um, but yeah, I think it'd be cool. I'm actually interested to see what an Xbox handheld like piece of hardware would look like, because like if you look at the Xbox One when that launched, like people said it was a VCR, but it was over engineered. Like they wanted that thing to stay cool. So if you open one up, there's an incredible amount of empty space inside because they just did not want the Red Ring like Part 2 happening. Uh, but ever since like the Xbox One S, the One X, the Series X and S, like premium built hardware that actually feels good. So if you have an Xbox style controller with like a screen in the middle, kind of like a Steam Deck, like that would be really cool, especially with the Xbox ergonomics. It's going to be an interesting year for hardware in general because the PlayStation Pro is out in November. The Switch 2 is apparently going to be announced in the next 2 weeks. Uh, I'm actually really excited to see what that's like. All let's face it, all Nintendo need to do is more powerful and backwards compatibility. That's it. Right? They don't have to concentrate on like pushing AI or ray tracing and all this stuff. They just put out a more powerful console with backwards compatibility. That's literally it. Although I would like achievements, like like out of all the companies, like Nintendo, it makes sense. You could call them coins or stars. I don't know. Some people just don't like it when you bring that up. But hey, it is what it is. But again, it's going to be interesting few months for hardware. Logan, have you got anything else to say before we close out the show?
Yeah, just a couple things. One, there's a brand new announcement that Xbox is has announced a documentary about the development of Stalker 2 during this, conflict they've been having going on over there. And it's going to be on Xbox's YouTube channel on October 3rd. It's called War Game: The Making of Stalker 2. So that'll be a really interesting documentary for people to check out. That just got announced literally a couple minutes ago. And then I wanted to say there's been this weird thing. It's like just because Sony does something, then people turn around and think Xbox has to do it or vice versa. Like there's been a lot of fear mongering about disk drives today that I noticed. And to me, like I I understand the idea that they might make consoles without drives in the future, but to say 100% certainty that it is definitively not going to have one, or, at the very least, they need to make an option for having an add on for a next gen Xbox. Because, like I kind of, threw the gauntlet earlier about BC, like, again, like you said, you talk this game and you walk this game about backwards compatibility. But if you make a console that won't actually let you play some of the games that you have made available via backwards compatibility because they are disc only, like a Fear Files, um, 50 Cent Blood in the Sand, various delisted games for licensing reasons, like Bad Company 1 and 2. Like, there are numerous games you can only play via disc now. If you make it to where you can't at all access those games because you either don't include a disk drive or don't make an add on disk drive, you're already neutering your own BC commitment. So I don't know. I just don't like this fear mongering about it, and I think we should wait before everybody gets up in arms about it.
Yeah, no, you're right because if you think about it, makes more sense for Microsoft to do a disk drive than Sony. Like people are doing, like you said, the whole fear mongering thing. Like on Xbox, I can go over right now and get my KOTOR disc and put it in my Xbox and it plays. Because obviously backwards compatibility, you can play these games natively. So it makes more sense for Microsoft, if anything, to do it than anyone else. Like you said, we have to wait on it. I think it would be one of those moves where, like, look, everyone listening and seeing this, I know Logan's seeing this. Every single time Microsoft launches or even announces a digital Xbox console, we see the usual suspects come out and talk about game preservation, but they do not bat an eye.
DRM.
Yeah, or
Oh,
DRM.
no.
But these same people, they don't bat an eye that, Sony launched a digital-only PlayStation. And then this happened with the disc drive not being packed in. And then, you don't have backwards compatibility with PlayStation 3, PlayStation 2, PlayStation 1, PSP, PS Vita. You don't have any of that. You can buy these little ports. You can't put in your disc and play your game. We're going to charge you for cloud saves as well. That's a nice one nobody talks about. But nobody bats an eye. Game preservation is only brought up when it comes to Xbox. So I think Xbox, they've learned a lot over the years. And obviously, I do think there will be a disc drive option next time. But again, that's something we don't have to worry about for 2 years. Anyway, everyone in chat has been awesome. Logan's been great talking to you once again. Technical issues aside, all that stuff can be sorted. We'll be back the same time next week for another episode of All Things Xbox podcast. Depending on what is going on with my situation when it comes to the Age of Mythology stuff, the podcast may start a little bit early. I'm not entirely sure yet. I'll post about it on Twitter. I should be posting another video this week on the channel, so if you like certain Xbox games from the past, or maybe ones you don't know about, you maybe want to pay attention to that. The link to my last video is down in the description down below. 20 biggest games coming to Xbox Series X and S for September 2024. A bunch of these games are still yet to release, and there's so many cool games coming this month. And honestly, it's going to be a great year for games. Anyway, once again, everyone in chat's been awesome. We'll be back next week. We're out, everybody.